Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to News Dose. And I know the last few weeks have been a little rough for the Xbox brand with the CMA's decision. And well, now also the reception for Redfall as well. This is certainly not a good look for Xbox. More on that here in just a second. But they do also have a couple good things quietly happening in the background as they just announced a few more Xbox Game Pass games today, and there's definitely a few gems in this lineup. Also on top of that, a much requested update is on its way to Xbox sometime here soon, so we're going to get into all of that a little later on today. Then more on that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom leak because things just got a whole lot worse for Nintendo. They do have a very real problem here, though at the same time, there was also a pretty major question that was answered among this leak. As always, though, do hit those buttons below. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Other than that, though, let's just go and jump right into it. Starting off with, let's just go and start off with Redfall and its reviews. This was supposed to be a rather big release for Xbox. I mean, they made some good games this generation like Hi-Fi Rush, they made Pentiment, Grounded, and a few other games like that, but they do need more of these big AAA games, and that's where Redfall comes in. It can kind of fill that void and end a bit of a drought for those big first-party releases. Unfortunately, however, that's not what happened. Instead, it appears Redfall has kind of damaged Xbox's reputation more than it actually helped them, because reviews are out and it currently has a 63 overall score on Metacritic. Yeah, ouch. That is not what you want to hear when it comes to a big release like this. I mean, some reviewers are even describing it as one of 2023's worst games. And it's not because the 30 frames per second that's drawn so much attention up to this point. Instead, it's more about the gameplay itself, about its structure, the AI, and just the emptiness of the world. And that's really such a shame here because this is an Arcane game, which, you know, they've made great games in the past, like Prey, like Dishonored, and like Deathloop. So, I mean, we know that they can make good games, but yeah, Redfall, it might be a bit of an outlier here. Now, I really haven't played too much of this game myself, so I'll kind of form my own opinion as I play more. But one thing's clear right now, and that's that Redfall is a bad look for Xbox. Now, at the same time, I don't necessarily think that some of the reactions online are fair, where people are acting like this is just the end of the world for Xbox. It's the end of Xbox as we know it. That's a little bit dramatic for me. Again, I think they've had some high-quality releases from several of their new studios already, and every single publisher will have a bad game from time to time. That's inevitable. It's always important to keep things in perspective. But I think what stands out to me about this specific release is that it almost kind of feels like Xbox and Bethesda gave up on Redfall at a certain point. It just kind of seems like they didn't want to flat out cancel it because a lot of time was invested into it. That also would have created hysteria online, though they did give it an extra year of development, but after that didn't help. It does seem like they just kind of gave up on it and just wanted to get it out the door. Now, my thinking on that, though, is that they could have tried to maybe release it as an early access game, which I think could have helped avoid a lot of the reactions that we're seeing right now. But at the same time, I also kind of wonder if Xbox and Bethesda just want Arcane to move on and focus on their next game. I don't know. This release has just drawn a lot of attention to Xbox for all the wrong reasons, so yeah, I think the focus for Xbox moving forward should be to shift that mind share in the second half of 2023. Redfall certainly didn't turn out to be the game that fans or they wanted to, and I think by this point that June Xbox showcase will be very important for them, and I imagine they're going to need to come out swinging with some big future titles. Moving on, though, Respawn Entertainment also gave us an update on what they're working on next, or at least one of their next games. This is a studio fully capable of working on multiple games at once. In fact, that's exactly what they're doing right now. Of course, they just released Jedi Survivor. They also have a couple more Star Wars games in development. But also on top of all that, Vince Zampella did reveal he's too leading a small team to work on a brand new original title. Now, we don't really know too much about this game as of yet. All we currently know right now is that it's seemingly in early development and that he quote-unquote said the mission is to find the fun in something new. So it does kind of sound like that this might be a smaller, more creative title, but considering Vince Zampella and Respawn's history, this is certainly a game to keep an eye on. They have historically made some really good games. Now, at the same time, though, I know there's always that question, what about Titanfall 3? Is that ever going to happen? And, well, the bittersweet news here is that things haven't really changed. Vince did note that he would love to see Titanfall 3 happen, but for the time being, there are no exact dedicated plans for that. So there it is. Let's go talk about Xbox Game Pass, though, because this is always a fun time. They did just reveal the first wave of its May game, which includes 5 new titles and a couple returns. Obviously, the first one here is Redfall, and for as much criticism that game has received, I mean, you can still give it a try. Who knows, you might come away enjoying it, especially with its cooperative gameplay. Besieged and Quantum Break has also returned to Xbox Game Pass. There was a lot of talk last month when Quantum Break left. That is a first-party title, but they did fix up its licensing issues, and it's now returned to both Xbox Game Pass as well as on Steam. You can actually pick it up over on there right now, too. So do kind of keep that in mind, but here are the other 4 titles coming over the next 9 days. This includes Fuga 2, coming on May 11th, Ravenlock, which will release on May 4th, Shadowrun Trilogy on May 9th, and then the Weird West Definitive Edition, which will be out on May 8th. So this is actually a fairly solid lineup here with a few gems more than worth a try, and that has to start with Ravenlock. This is yet another day 1 release from Coco Cucumber. Now, Game Pass subscribers might already be familiar with them as they released Echo Generation into Game Pass back in 2021. The game was lauded for its unique and attractive art style, and you can see that once again here in Ravenlock. It is an absolutely stunning game that more than stands out. Instead of being a turn-based RPG inspired by Paper Mario's interactive elements, though, instead this is a full-blown action RPG. It does appear to just be a bigger game overall, and hopefully they've kind of learned from their previous release. But the gist here is that in Ravenlock, you stumble across a mystical mirror that takes you to an unknown world filled with monsters and a malevolent queen. At the very least, on paper, it certainly sounds interesting, and it's just one of those games where you kind of hope it's as good as it looks. I mean, if it is, then this could be a great day 1 title, as again, it will launch in a Game Pass on May 4th, just 2 short days away. Now, Fuga 2 is also a rather interesting title. This is yet another day 1 release, you have to love it, but it's kind of the opposite of Ravenlock. If you're instead looking for a turn-based JRPG style of game, then Fuga 2 might actually be up your alley. The first game is in fact a bit of a hidden gem. It was very well received critically with an 85 overall score on Metacritic. It also has a 92% approval rating on Steam, which I think is very telling right there, but that's kind of the thing. You can see it only has 675 reviews on Steam. So despite being a very well-received game by both fans and critics alike, it is a little bit overlooked. That there, though, that's kind of where Game Pass shines, though. With this being a day 1 release, a lot more people will have the opportunity to try it out for themselves, and just kind of considering the quality of the first entry and all the positive reception it got, this is certainly a game that you might want to go ahead and keep an eye on, especially if you do like turn-based JRPGs. Now, speaking of quality, though, you can also say the same for the Shadowrun Trilogy. This is a beloved classic RPG series in that more isometric format. It is now making its way over to PC Game Pass, and you know, if anything else, if you want to sink countless hours into a cyberpunk RPG world, well, you'll have that here in the Shadowrun Trilogy. Then as for the Weird West Definitive Edition, the original game did release last year. It got rather solid reviews for its dark fantasy reimagining of the Wild Wild West. I've seen some fans really enjoy this one, and well, now the Definitive Edition with all of its quality of life improvements will be available for Game Pass subscribers starting May 8th. So, yeah, this is actually a pretty solid lineup of games here with a few hidden gems that you might want to give a try. Again, Redfall might not be everybody's cup of tea, but there's a few other interesting titles here if you want to give them a go. Let's go talk about this Zelda situation, though, because things just keep getting worse for Nintendo. Now, there's a bit of good news here for fans as well, so do kind of stay tuned for that. But over the weekend, as we talked about yesterday, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom did, in fact, leak out. I mean, people were selling copies on reseller websites for hundreds of dollars, which, you know, sold practically immediately, of course. And now that it's in the wild, like I said yesterday, the next step is emulation. Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom ROM has now in fact surfaced online nearly 2 weeks ahead of its official launch. Now, this did also happen with Xenoblade 3 last year, so this isn't anything new for Nintendo, but this is a far worse situation for Nintendo considering the anticipation for Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and also in just how early all this has actually happened. This isn't just a few days ahead of its release, but instead, now Nintendo is going to be on high alert to keep spoilers to an absolute minimum for the next 10 or so days. So far, though, that's kind of proven to be difficult because images, videos, and just full-on streams are appearing online, and as more people get their hands on this game, this is likely only going to get worse. I mean, people have posted its intro online, just a ton of gameplay out there, and Nintendo's scrambling. I mean, they are scrambling to take all this down before it spreads too far. Yeah, it's just kind of a mess for them, but what I can tell you all is that if you are concerned about spoilers, absolutely stay away from Zelda topics on social media. I mean, I'm sure Nintendo will do their due diligence as much as they can, but there's really only so much that they can do when something like this happens. I think the thing for them, though, the more important thing is for them to figure out how to stop this from happening with their future games. You know, the problem here is that this seemingly happens with every single big Nintendo release anymore, so they need to kind of figure this problem out going forward. Now, like I said before, though, as troubling as this is for Nintendo and for the people trying to avoid spoilers, this leak, however, did do one good thing, and that is that they answered some very important questions that fans have. In specific, are there dungeons or are there not? Now, I'm not going to flat out answer that question on my channel because some might consider it a spoiler, so I'm going to kind of play it cautious here. But what I'm going to do for you all is that if you do want the answer to that question, as I know I very much did, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link in the description below posted by Kotaku, which answers that very specific question. You can just click on that link, Control F, type in dungeons. Don't look at anything else, though. There are other spoilers, but if you do want the answer to that specific question, you can find it there. Now, we do also have one last thing to go over here, and that's for Xbox. Yet again, they've actually had a rather busy 24 hours, maybe not for all the reasons that you might want, but this does also include a much requested dashboard update. Fans have been very critical of Xbox's dashboard because it almost kind of comes off as counteractive. I mean, Xbox has these nice dynamic themes that you can use as a background, but the problem here is that, well, it's covered up by these huge tiles that Microsoft likes to use for their apps. Well, Xbox is now finally listening to fans as they just announced that they're scaling back those tiles to better show your background. I will go and include a picture here on screen, and I mean, as you can see, it does look much, much better. For the time being, though, this is only going to be available for users that are in the Alpha Skip Ahead and Alpha Rings, where they can preview things like this a little early. After some feedback, though, they do intend on rolling this feature out to the rest of the Xbox community. So, I mean, it is good to see them listen here. It kind of took them a while to get here. Hey, Xbox, while you're listening, how about a platinum equivalent achievement type of thing? But anyways, we can now actually enjoy our dynamic backgrounds sometime in the near future. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, in retrospect, do you think Xbox should have delayed Redfall again? Well, most of you all, being 79%, did say yes, it should have been delayed once again, while 13% of you said no. I, however, did notice that some of you said that you feel that this game was unsalvageable, and some even mentioned flat out canceling it, but I think it's important to keep in mind that that would have raised some alarms as well. I don't know if that's necessarily the answer here. I think in a situation like that, there's really not an answer where Xbox can win. If they canceled, you know, fans are going to be mad. If it turned out to be bad, well, of course, fans will be mad as well. So I think for me, I think it's definitely better to just release it because I'm sure some people will find enjoyment. You know, at the end of the day, everything's subjective, and I'm absolutely sure some will find enjoyment with Redfall. It might not necessarily be the majority, but there were, in fact, some critics that gave it a good rating, and I'm sure some fans will also find enjoyment as well. So I'm definitely not in a boat of canceling it, but I do think delaying it again, or at least putting it into early access, might have been better than just giving up on it, which is what I think they actually did. Whatever the case may be, though, Redfall has been a disappointing release, and there's no way around that. I think the bigger problem here is that it just kind of came at a terrible time for Xbox following the CMA's Activision decision. So morale was already kind of low within the Xbox community, and it kind of feels like they needed to win here, but yeah, that just didn't happen. What I will say, though, because I know there's some rather dramatic takes out there, while Redfall certainly is not the game Xbox needs right now, it, however, is not the end of Xbox, as some are kind of suggesting online. It, however, is disappointing, and definitely should not have been $70. Anyways, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.